Hello everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am scaling it back and taking it back to basics. I talk a lot on this channel about kind of the 201 of novel writing, how to deal with specific problems like pacing or structure or character development, how to finish a book, and how to get published. But I've never actually talked about how do you actually write a book, just kind of the nitty-gritty. How do you write a book? So today I am going to be covering the 101 steps to take if you just want to write a book and you're not quite sure how. So the first step is to come up with an idea, and not just any idea, but you want it to be an idea that is robust enough to support an entire novel. So a novel is going to be at least 50,000 words, but word counts are typically even higher. So for example, the genre I write, which is YA science fiction and fantasy, the minimum is 70,000 words, but it can go as high as 100, or if you're lucky, 110, 120,000 words. But I'm gonna link you down below to my word count video so that you have more specific information on word counts. But you're writing your first novel, you need to get at least 60 to 70,000 good words out of your idea. Not every idea can support this much word count. Some ideas make great short stories or even novellas. So you have to make sure that your idea has enough plot conflict, character development, and stakes to support a novel-length work. You also want to make sure that your idea is somewhat original and hasn't been done. Now, none of us are reinventing the wheel. There are popular tropes for a reason, and everything kind of borrows from other things. But specifically, you want to think about the genre of book that you want to write and the current market for that book. So what books are out and popular right now? Do a search, look on Amazon or go to your local bookstore and just make sure no one has written your exact idea. Make sure it's going to stand out. I also have a video on book ideas, where to get them and what to do with them, which I will also link down below. The second step, once you have your idea, is to develop it. So this can mean making an outline if outlining speaks to you, so it's planning out all of the beats of your plot. I recommend reading Save the Cat by Blake Snyder or looking at the Blake Snyder beat sheet. I also have a video on that and I'll link it down below, or looking at something like Freytag's Pyramid. There are many great craft resources that can help you with plot and story structure if you do want to outline, or even if you don't, it can really help. I'll put some of my favorite craft book references down below as well. So you're either going to outline your plot, everything that's going to happen, so that you can then follow that blueprint as you're drafting, or you're not going to outline because you might be a pantser. A pantser is someone who flies by the seat of their pants when they write, so they don't like planning everything out because in most cases, planning something ahead of time kind of kills the creative drive for them. They thrive from telling themselves the story as they write it. I'm one of those writers. I say this to let you know that this could potentially be your process. That said, most writers start with outlining, trying to outline, because it's kind of the go-to mode for writing a novel. So it's definitely worth trying, but if you're feeling stifled, pantsing might work for you. Now, if this is the case and it's your first novel, I do recommend kind of going in the middle, plantsing. Come up with kind of the beginning of your book, the inciting incident, kind of the midpoint turn, like the big twist that's going to happen in the middle, and have a decent idea of the ending. That way you're pantsing around kind of a structure and you're going to feel less lost. The next step is you're going to want to work on your characters, but just to complicate things a little, you might actually find that you need this, step 3, so to speak, first, before step 2, that kind of outlining or pantsing step. Many people start their process of plotting and planning their story with character. Whichever way works for you is fine. But every story revolves around characters, and specifically, typically, one main character. The person through whose point of view you're going to tell the story that the reader is going to follow. You need to think about who your main character is. What do they want? What is standing in the way of what they want? This is typically where you're going to get your main story conflict, and then your stakes is what your main character stands to lose if they don't get what they want. You want to think of all of these things to create an interesting character arc, and the character arc is going to go hand in hand with your plot arc. You also want to think about who is getting in the way of your main character. Sometimes antagonists in stories are thoughts or ideas or things, but very often they are people or creatures. So who is the antagonist of your story? Who is standing in the way of your main character? Very often this person is going to be a foil to your main character, so they're going to be their opposite in some way. So you want to develop your antagonist just as much as you want to develop your main character. What do they want? What is standing in their way? Usually the main character. And what do they stand to lose if they don't get what they want? You'll also want to think about the love interest, if you have one, if there is a romance plot, as well as key supporting characters to your main character. This is usually friends or family, people who go on journeys with them, and so on. Now, you don't have to intricately work out every single character unless that works for you in your process. Many outliners, of course, do this ahead of time. But if you're a pantser, it's totally fine just to have a few core characters and then throw caution to the wind and start writing. And trust me, you'll end up figuring out a lot of characters along the way. Of course, I have many videos on character development and a few writing hacks on character development, which I will link to down below. The next step is to get your tools, the way that you're actually gonna write your book. And I know what you're thinking, Alexa, my tool is my laptop. Well, it could also be pen and paper. Some people like to write longhand in a notebook for the first draft. So if that's gonna work for you, get your tools. You want to get a good pen or multiple pens and a notebook or series of notebooks where you can write. Or if it is on your computer, most of us write on our computers, it's where you're going to actually write your words. Are you going to use Microsoft Word, or do you want to try something like Scrivener, which is a novel writing software tool that I'll tell you totally cracked wide open novel writing for me, changed the game for me. I'll link you down below to some videos I have all about Scrivener. Speaking of tools, an outline is also a tool, so that step of outlining and planning your plot is also part of your tools for writing. Another thing you might want to consider is, are you keeping track of your writing, like keeping track of your word counts, etc., from a day-to-day basis? I use a system of putting stars in a planner for every 500 words I write, something that I got from V.E. Schwab. This helps me kind of track visually my progress in a novel and in a way kind of reward myself. Like, who doesn't like getting a gold star? So that's a tool that I use to keep myself on track when I'm writing. Another tool for this can be writing buddies. If you have fellow writers who are also working on a book, checking in with each other or doing word sprints with each other, those are tools that can help you to write your novel. So you want to get all of this prepared and decide what you want to do, though it's always okay to try something midstream and, shift what you're doing. But these are just some tools you might want to consider when you're getting started. The next step is to create a writing schedule. You'll want to carve out time either every day or as often as possible where you write. You stop everything and write, no excuses, you make the time. The hardest part of writing a book, honestly, is just making the time and doing the words. It's harder than it sounds, but it is very doable. And my top tip is actually to make writing a habit and to create behaviors and spaces that, almost like Pavlov's dog, subconsciously force you to write. So it could be a time of the day where you just know you always shut off the TV or go to your favorite coffee shop or whatever it is. That time of day is when you write. And trust me, your brain will start to go, oh, it feels like it's writing time, and you'll do it. Or similarly, it could be music. You put on a certain type of music and it just gets you in the mood for writing and you write. It could be scents, like you could burn a specific candle or use aromatherapy. It could be food, like maybe you don't get your dessert unless you write. You can use a lot of different tools to kind of make writing kind of become a habit for you, but definitely think of this in terms of schedule. So it is best if you write every day, but it isn't a rule. You don't have to write every day. If you don't write every day, you're still a writer. But writing every day exercises your writing muscle, and it does make it far more likely that you're going to push through and finish your book. Part of this in making writing a schedule and a habit is that you're going to have to learn to push through when it's hard, and it's going to be hard all the time. We can't always write when we feel like it or when the creative muse strikes. Now, it's great when we have those moments, but there's going to be so many moments where, trust me, you're not going to have that. And so if you've created the schedule and the habit, you'll write anyway. And writing when you don't feel like it or don't want to, or when the words are hard, is what enables you to push through, finish the book, and, accomplish the things. I'll also say that you shouldn't force habits that aren't organic to you. A lot of people swear by writing in the morning. They get up several hours early in the morning to write before work or whatever they have to do. But if you're not a morning person, this isn't gonna work. Hi, not a morning person. Similarly, if people like me swear by writing at night, but that's just not gonna work for you. You're asleep by 10, don't push writing at night. Go with what is organic to you. But on the same token, don't be afraid to try something new, because you never know what's gonna work. For a really long time, I resisted going to coffee shops to work on my books, and then I tried it, and it was like magic. Kind of breaking out of my routine really helped me work. The next step is to set a word count goal for yourself and set a deadline. Having something to work towards can really help you, especially if you have a total word count, a rough deadline, and then you can break up the daily word counts that you need to hit or would like to hit so that you can tackle your book in smaller, manageable chunks. If you know, okay, I have to write 1,000 words a day, or even it could just be 500 words a day, and you know that you want your book to be 80,000 words, you can use wonderful, glorious math, which I know we writers love, to have a realistic idea of, well, how long it's going to take you to write this book and what you need to do to accomplish your word count. Books are monumental, intense things, and I find that breaking it up into manageable chunks really helps me kind of focus on the task at hand and not get too overwhelmed by how long a book is and how long it takes to write, and kind of stick to my goals and push through. Now, the deadline can be artificially imposed. You can just decide that you want to finish a book by the end of the year, or you can look to set things within the writing community to guide you. There could be a pitch contest on Twitter, or a time that is best to query agents, whatever it is that works for you to give yourself that deadline goal and keep your eyes on the prize. And I also do recommend not being too ambitious with your word count goals. It kind of depends on what outputs you're capable of and whether or not you are a fast writer. So I'll tell you, writing a book in a month is really hard, and you shouldn't beat yourself up if you're not capable of it. There's nothing wrong with having a lower word count goal and deciding to take longer to work on your book. Kind of get a feel for what's going to be organic for you and just try your best. Whether a book is written really quickly or really slowly, the book gets done. Whatever process works for you is the right process. And this leads me to the last and final step of writing a novel, and that just is be nice to yourself, be kind. Writing a book is really hard. It's natural to struggle. You're gonna have days where you think that you are crazy for even attempting this and you're not sure that you can do it, and the words are hard and you don't want to, or everything you write is just garbage. Be nice to yourself, take a deep breath, forgive yourself if there's days where you don't hit your word count goal, forgive yourself if there's days where you think the writing is garbage, and I also encourage you to, kind of take a break from it and look at it later. About 90% of the time, the words that we're convinced are really bad really aren't as bad as we think. I keep more of my garbage writing than I think I will in the moment. So just push through kind of that perfectionism and that instinct that so many of us have to beat up on ourselves and get down on ourselves when we're not perfect. Novel writing is not perfect. It is not an exercise in perfection, and nobody writes a perfect first draft. feel more secure in the knowledge that your goal, your job, isn't to write a perfect book. Your job is just to write a book. Finish a book. That is the hardest part. Then you can worry about making it better. The hardest part of writing novels, period, is writing the first book. Figuring out what your process is and essentially teaching yourself how to finish. But once you've done it, trust me, writing will always be hard, but in a certain way it gets easier because all of a sudden you have the confidence. Well, you're definitely capable of writing a book because you did it once, so you can do it again. So that is the hardest part of finishing the first time. Finishing. So that's the final step. Just be kind to yourself when the going gets tough, because the going is gonna get tough. But I assure you, you can get through this, and there's no better feeling than finishing your first book. So good luck with writing. Let me know down below in the comments the questions that you have. I'm really curious because it's been such a long time since I was in that headspace, since I was trying to write my first book. Gosh, it was at least 6 years ago. So I'd love to make more videos that kind of tackle book writing from kind of that 101 perspective. And I'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have that I might be able to help answer? If you're not already subscribed to the channel, I post videos 2 to 3 times a week all about writing and craft, finishing novels, perfecting them, polishing them, submitting them, being traditionally published, and particularly writing YA fiction. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will try to make more kind of 101 book writing content. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, and especially guys, happy writing.